Hi everyone, welcome back to Let's Make a Better World. I haven't made a video on this channel in a while, and I especially haven't made a video on space travel in a while. And I know my series on space travel seems to be very popular, so figured it's high time I made another one. And I decided today to talk about the history of unmanned space missions, and um, I can only get it through about half of it. We've had tons and tons of unmanned space missions, and we've really learned a lot from them. I mean, I don't think that many people know that much about the history of unmanned space missions. I'd say that's been an even bigger part of the history of space travel than manned space travel. Probably a lot bigger, at least in terms of like the scientific achievements we made, plus just the number of satellites we've sent up and what we've done with them. So anyway, the video I'm going to do today only covers, like I said, the first half of all the unmanned space missions, roughly, which only goes through about the end of the up to the end of the 20th century. So I'll probably do a follow up of this one next time. Anyway, let's begin. Um, the first artificial satellite, at least set up by NASA, set up by the Americans, was Explorer 1. This was 1958. This was just a few months after Sputnik, which was the world's first artificial satellite. I'm sure you guys all know about that one. That was launched by the Soviet Union October 4th, 1957. That's what started the whole space race. But the first one we sent up was Explorer 1, I believe in January of 1958, just a few months later. And among other things, Explorer 1 discovered the Van Allen belts, these magnetic belts around the Earth that protect the Earth from cosmic rays. So that was a pretty monumental discovery. And the next big project was Project Echo. This was the first communication satellite sent up. First one was set up in 1960. You can see these things are big, huge spheres. I guess they were, like I don't know exactly what they were, but you can see how big they are. On the picture on the left, they showed the team that helped design it below. And then in 1964, Echo 2. So the first one was Echo 1, that's on the left. Echo 2 is on the right. Um, I'm not sure exactly what these satellites did. They may have been weather satellites. I think weather satellites were a special type of communication satellite. And then the first private satellite ever sent up, this was not a NASA project, this was Telstar. These were launched in 1962. Well, Telstar 1 was launched in 1962, and then Telstar 2 in 1963. I believe these were weather satellites. And I don't know if you guys are familiar. There was actually a hit song by the Tornadoes, a British group. I think December 1962 they had a number one song called Telstar. It was an instrumental song, and it was a tribute to the American space program, in particular, I guess the Telstar satellite. Just thought I'd mention that. And then we had the Ranger program from 1961 to 1965. These were the first this probes that were sent to the moon. They actually, some of them actually landed. Well, they didn't do soft landings on the moon, but they crash landed onto the moon, and we got the first up close pictures of the moon from these Ranger satellites. So that was pretty monumental. This was I think 1964. The picture on the right, I think, was taken in 1964. That was when the first of these Ranger satellites landed on the moon. I think that was Ranger 7. And this was 5 years before the first manned moon landing by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, which I'm sure you guys all know about. And then we had the Mariner program from 1962 to 1973. These were a series of, I believe, 10 satellites and space probes that were launched into the inner solar system. And we looked up close at all the planets in the inner solar system. namely Mercury, Venus, and Mars. And the pictures on the bottom, the one on the bottom left is a picture of all of Mars taken from it. And then we also discovered, I don't think we discovered these moons, but we took the first up close photos of Mars's moons. It turns out that Mars has two very small moons. They're named Phobos and Deimos. And Phobos is the one in the middle, Deimos is the one on the right. I think they're only about 5 or 10 miles in diameter each, so they're very tiny moons. But anyway, and then we have the Helios program from 1974 to 1976. There were two of these Helios satellites sent up. They were both sent up to investigate the sun up close. We didn't really get that close to the sun, but we got this. This was the closest any satellites ever been to the sun. Closer than Mercury, even about 27 million miles from the sun, or about 0.29 astronomical units. Astronomical unit is the distance from the Earth to the sun. So it's a lot closer to the sun than the Earth. And you probably wouldn't want to be on one of these. Probably get very hot. And then we had the Viking program from 1975 to 1976. And this was a pretty exciting. I remember when this was going on, by the way. This is when I was in high school. And this was exciting because these were the first satellites that landed on Mars. There were two of them. They were both launched in 1975, and they both landed on Mars in 1976. And I remember when I learned about this before it went up. I heard that this was going to determine whether or not there was life on Mars. A lot of people still thought there was life on Mars. Some people still do. I don't think there is. I think we've been pretty conclusively shown it that at least there's no multicellular organisms on Mars. There may have been, bacteria or single cell organisms at some point. I think that's inconclusive. But one thing the Viking satellites showed was that there were no multicellular organisms on Mars, no Martians. So that kind of laid to rest a long-standing myth. And I think it got beautiful pictures. I mean, this is pretty amazing. I mean, look at this picture. This is actually a picture of the surface of Mars, which kind of looks. I mean, there's a lot of areas near where I live that look kind of like this. I live in Nevada, which is a big desert. Most of it's a lot of desert. And I've seen parts of Nevada and Arizona that kind of look like this. So I guess it doesn't look too much different from parts of the Earth. And it is a big desert. Mars is a big, huge desert. No water at all on Mars. All land and all desert and all very, very cold and about 100 degrees below zero on a very, very thin carbon dioxide atmosphere, about a hundredth of Earth's atmosphere. So uninhabitable. If we were gonna live on Mars, we'd have to have good space suits, and I think there are plans to terraform Mars one of these days. I'd rather see space colonies. I don't know what our obsession is with terraforming Mars. It's just another big body out there. But anyway, whatever turns you on, as they say. And then we had the Voyager program that started in 1977. I think this was one of the most exciting unmanned space missions we've ever done. There were, I think, two Voyager satellites, and these were probes that use. I think Pioneer may have been the first satellite to leave the solar system. I'm not sure. There was Pioneer. There were two programs to leave the solar system. I think the first was Pioneer. I think that one started in 1973, but that was followed up by Voyager, which started in 1977. And you can see on the right, these are the paths of the two Voyager satellites. Now, they're both outside of the solar system. They're both something like over 100 astronomical units away, but they're still transmitting data. It's amazing. I mean, these things don't even have very powerful communication on them, but we can still pick up their signals. Pretty amazing to me. Carl Sagan was really interested in the Voyager program. As a matter of fact, he was very instrumental in it because he sent two things aboard. He sent a golden record called "The Sounds of Earth," which was recordings of different sounds on Earth that he was hoping that if we ever found extraterrestrials out in space, they might pick up the record and learn about us. He also sent a plaque that showed, I should have showed pictures of these things, but he showed a plaque, a very famous plaque that had a picture of a naked man and woman, kind of generic, mixture of races. And he also had kind of a primer which would show, where we were and, what we were made of and all this stuff so that if aliens ever found it, they could go visit us. That hasn't happened yet. But it was a nice idea. Maybe it will one of these days. This thing hasn't gotten to the nearest star yet. It hasn't gotten, it's still got a long way to go. So maybe someday some aliens will catch up with it. But anyway, I think it's exciting. And then in 1983, we had a thing called IRAS. This was acronym for Infrared Astronomical Satellite. A lot of people think Hubble was the first space telescope. It wasn't. IRAS was. IRAS was an infrared space telescope. It didn't work with visible light. It worked with infrared light, which is light that has a longer wavelength than visible light. And it is a big part of astronomy. We don't just use visible light to observe astronomical phenomena. We try to use as much of the electromagnetic spectrum as we can, and the infrared is just another part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And actually, we have learned a lot from looking at infrared images. And on the left is a picture of Iris. On the right is an infrared picture of a comet that it discovered. And I guess most of the bulk of the comet is where you see the red. But anyway, so that was Iris. And then we had Magellan. Um, this was spacecraft that was sent to Venus, and it took very detailed pictures of the planet Venus. And by the way, I didn't mention this yet, but before we actually sent satellites up to Venus, people used to think Venus. I mean, astronomers didn't know that much about Venus. It's almost the same size as the Earth, and it's just a little bit closer to the sun than the Earth. So before we actually went to Venus, a lot of people thought Venus was Earth's twin. They thought it would be a habitable planet, not too much different from the Earth, maybe a little bit warmer since it's a little closer to the sun. They were dead wrong. I mean, Venus is the most hellish planet in the solar system. Kind of ironic, because Venus was named after the Greek goddess, or the Roman goddess of love and fertility. And it turns out to be the most hellish place in the solar system. It's about 900 degrees. It has a lethal, corrosive carbon dioxide atmosphere that's about 100 times denser than the Earth's atmosphere. It had a runaway greenhouse effect that basically just destroyed the planet. And it's impossible for any kind of life to exist on Venus. And probably not be a good idea for people to go there, at least not any time in the foreseeable future. So we were dead wrong about Venus, but it's still a pretty interesting planet to investigate. And on the right, there's 5 pictures of all of Venus that were taken from Magellan. So anyway, then in 1989 through 2003, we had the Galileo satellite. This was a robotic space probe sent to investigate Jupiter and its moons. And the picture on the left is an artist's rendition showing Jupiter in the middle. And then on the left, I think that's Io, which is one of its large moons, Galilean satellites. Io is another hellish place, by the way. Io is a very strange moon. I mean, it's basically a volcanic moon. I think most of it's molten, and that might be as hellish as Venus, actually. There's a lot in the solar system we didn't expect. Which I think is part of what makes it so fascinating. And then the picture on the right shows the path of the Galileo satellite. So anyway, that was Galileo. And then I'm sure most of you probably know about the Hubble Space Telescope. This was, it's still operating. It was set up in 1990. I didn't mention this here, but when they first sent it up, NASA messed up. They didn't make the lens right. It turned out the lens had the wrong curvature. It was a mirror, actually. Yeah, I think it had a no. It was a mirror. The mirror had the wrong curvature, so it wouldn't send. It couldn't take good images because the images weren't focused properly. But the triumph of Hubble was, I think, in 1993, if I'm not mistaken. There was a mission on a space shuttle, manned mission, to fix Hubble. They actually put some corrective lenses on Hubble and fixed its optics so that now it works perfectly, and it sent some of the best images, telescopic images that anybody's ever seen. The picture on the right is a picture of the Pinwheel Galaxy, very detailed picture. This galaxy is 1 million light years away, if you can imagine that. And good thing about Hubble, it's out in space. I mean, we have very powerful telescopes here on Earth. The problem with that is even though they're very powerful, they're inhibited by the Earth's atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere blocks out a lot of the light, and it kind of ruins the images because not only does it block some of the light, but the atmosphere has a lot of air in it, which distorts the images. And so if you get out in space, you can get much better images of astronomical phenomena. That's why Hubble is so exciting, and I'm glad they fixed it. Um, anyway, and then the last thing I want to talk about is the Discovery program. I spent about at least an hour making this video, and I guess I could have continued this, but I decided to stop here. The Discovery program is a program of several unmanned missions, which included the Mars Pathfinder. You guys probably know about the Mars Pathfinder. This included a robotic a rover called the Sojourner, and there's a picture of it on the bottom. I think I also had a picture of that on the cover slide. This is a robotic vehicle that can explore Mars and pick up samples of it, and we've learned a lot about Mars from this thing. So I think this stuff is all really exciting, and I guess the main point I'm trying to make tonight is that we can learn a hell of a lot about space without actually going there ourselves. But I still think we should go there because of the adventure. But anyway, that concludes my video for tonight. Thank you for watching. Let's make a better world and live long and prosper like I didn't do it right. Live long and prosper like Spock says. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.